Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, the Red Raiders a no-show in the AP Top 25. We're looking for loaded guns in the return game and also discussing luxuries in the secondary. Next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Raider! Everything runs through Lubbock.
Great to see you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making us your first listen once again on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. He's the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. And Chris, great to be back with you once again, my man. And we are breaking down Red Raider football once again. We're going to get into a conversation regarding specialists today, the return men. You know, once upon a time, a weapon for Red Raider football. Could it be again in 2023? We'll talk about the guys whose shoulders that will rest upon. And also get to the secondary, one of the more interesting focal points of the offseason, that group of defensive backs, because there's quite a mixture there of some experience here in Lubbock at Texas Tech, some experience elsewhere, and now trying to meld these guys together. And we'll hear from the secondary coach, Marcel Yates, on one in particular and have some thoughts on some of those other cover men for Joey McGuire and the Red Raiders. But we begin with the Associated Press Top 25, which we had yesterday to digest, Chris, and we're wondering whether or not Texas Tech would sneak into this thing just like they did the coaches poll at number 24. They do not. It is close, but no cigar territory for Coach McGuire and the Red Raiders in this regard. We'll get to a few of them. I'm sure most of you have already perused this list, so I won't run it down entirely. But from the Big 12 Conference, you got Longhorns, you got K-State, you got Texas Christian, you got Oklahoma. Longhorns are at number 11, K-State at 16, Texas Christian at 17. The Sooners are number 20 in the nation. So, Chris, where do we go now with the Red Raiders not appearing here? What do you make of this? Surprise, not surprise? And what do you think those guys in red and black over at the corner of University and Marcia Sharp will make of this? A little bit of a motivating factor, I would imagine, available to the coaching staff.
Yeah, you know, it is at face value. It is interesting when you kind of pick this thing apart a bit. I thought Tech would end up in this poll between 20 to 25, if I'm being honest. I thought they would be, you know, sitting there at 21, 23, you know, whatever, somewhere in that sweet spot. Ultimately, they end up at, I guess, technically 26. So they're like just outside of it based on the votes that were tallied. This poll is made up of 63 writers, but it is weird when you look at this is the college football though. This is just kind of how it works. It is weird that Oklahoma was 6-7 on the season last year, lost a lot of their best players, and they're ranked, and then had to replace a lot of their best players and all those things. And, obviously Texas Tech beat Oklahoma. You're 8-5. The bulk of your team is back. So, you can kind of nitpick some of these things individually. Obviously you beat Texas and Oklahoma, and you beat Ole Miss. And those three teams are, I think, ranked, 11th, 20th, and 22. And you've got wins over those guys. But
yeah, and let me add, Chris, to that Oklahoma Sooners and Aggies, the only two, I believe, with the losing record last year to wind up in this preseason top 25.
And I will tell you, because we'll get to how I think Joey approaches this here in a second, but it's easy to be offended by this. It's easy to kind of, and we had some folks tweeting at us and all that were bugged. I think, by the way, shout out to Joshua Tucker, I think is who was tweeting you and I, avid listener to this podcast.
Army recruiter in College Station. Good God. You want to talk about a barren outpost? Who'd you piss off, Josh? Thoughts and prayers. Thank you for your service.
That's right. Absolutely. Yes. Doing all the good work.
All the good, man.
Yeah. But if you go back to last year's preseason AP poll, I think let's localize this a little bit. I thought this was fascinating to me. A&M was ranked 6th preseason last year. 6th. They finished 5-7. Oklahoma was ranked 9th in the preseason last year. They finished 6-7. Baylor was ranked 10th in the preseason last year. They finished 6-7. Oklahoma State was ranked 12th last year. They finished 7-6. TCU was not ranked at all. They played for the whole freaking thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the gist. And the beautiful thing is, the Oregon game, it gives you all that you could ever want. If you win it, you will be just fine. In fact, you'll be well into the teens, if not higher, depending on the score and what other things have happened around the country. However, if you lose it, you're going to be outside the poll. I mean, it's pretty much, I don't want to say all or nothing if this is what matters to you. Like, look at Texas and Alabama, that game on the same date. Texas will drop significantly if they drop that game. However, they will rise significantly if they get a win in Tuscaloosa on that day. So
I don't even know if they'll drop, Chris. They may rise if they lose because Sark's going to be out there beating it. Well, this was our best game of the season. Like I did hear him make the argument last year about last year, because they whereas Tech won a lot of their close games, Texas lost a lot of their close games. And I think what's funny is they're getting a lot of benefit of the doubt, as if they won't lose those same kinds of games now. But he's like, his argument was, hey, we didn't get blown out. We just lost really close. I mean, yeah, solid argument.
I'm sure that the Texas fan really loves hearing that. Yeah, you didn't get blown out. Yeah, good for you, man. But this is motivation, man. If I'm Joey, if you were ranked 18th, you probably could have used it in the same fashion. But man, not being ranked, okay, he knows what he's dealing with. He knows what he's got. He's probably hanging it up in the locker room everywhere, going, They don't believe in you, man. I believe in you. We believe in each other, but outside world, you better go show them. There's all kinds of buttons to push. And he talked about this after, I guess, practice on Saturday a bit, and he was like, "Hey, man, no matter where we are or are not in this poll, we will try to strive to get in it and just rise up it as the season rolls along." And that's everybody's goal, but you're going to get your chances. I mean, Wyoming, you're going to get a little bit of juice from a win there because it's all on the road and national TV and all that, but the Oregon thing will take care of itself. Yeah. I was surprised. I think you probably were slightly too. But hey, it is what it is, but it kind of makes it fun. It kind of takes you back off the radar just a titch.
Yeah, I mean, in maybe the cruelest spot, number 26, if that's a number at all, but also receiving votes territory. I think I saw, as we were having some fun with this last week, Brett McMurphy's 11th place vote was by far the highest that Texas Tech received. I think next in line was number 18 or number 19, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that was from the Toya Rose Don Williams of the AJ here in the LBK. Otherwise, you had some 23s, 22s, 25s, but not enough to make that appearance. Does it matter at the end of the day? Not if you go win. You handle your business, and it will matter in no way, shape, or form. There is still some angst and frustration for me as a college football fan, just in general, with preseason rankings. As I said last week on a teaser heading into that conversation about the coaches poll, preseason rankings are, misinformed, misguided, and useless enterprises unless Texas Tech is involved, and they were involved in that one, so that was a really important ranking. But Chris, can you remind me, I hate to ask you off the top of your head, but which one of these matter now? Which one impacts? Well, isn't one poll still factored into a committee ranking, or is it all just out there to use if you want it or not?
Neither factors in. Neither has any weight that I believe on any college football ranking. It's totally separate. I do think that's why both polls. It's like perception, kind of thing. It's like it attaches to a brand. I think the brands get more, leeway,
Sure.
kind of thing, or perceived brands. I think that the new guy to the party, I think Tulane has been in the mix here, and obviously Texas Tech has not been a member to this party. But I mean, it's just fascinating that Texas A&M was 5-7 last year. I think they're one of their best players on offense. One of their starting tight ends is out for the year, and yet it's like, well, they've got to be good. I mean, they recruit really well,
Right.
you know. And I'll be honest. I mean, a lot of the recruiting services, they kind of give the benefit of the doubt to the brand names too.
Sure.
Doesn't matter if that player is actually as good, but well, if so and so is recruiting them, then let's give them another star.
That's what I was going to say. We get some inherent bias on the front end and the back end. And for the recruit.
That's just kind of how it works. But you know, and back on like Joey, he may not even. This also may be something that they don't even address. I mean, he's got a very mature team. I say that you can hang it in every locker room and kind of push their buttons a little bit and kind of motivate them. I mean, I'll be really shocked if it's not ever uttered like or mentioned in passing or whatever. But I don't think that's this team's MO. I don't think they need that to motivate them. I think they're that's part of dealing with a very mature group, which this one is. You don't have to tell them. You know, and it doesn't really matter if you don't go out and win games anyways, if you are ranked or not ranked or whatever, because if you're ranked and lose, you're going to fall out. If you're unranked and win, you're going to get in. I mean, so you control your own destiny, which is the beauty of it. So, but I used to make fun of these polls, but in some ways I do like them because it gets us talking football. It gets us talking sports. In some ways it is unnecessary or it doesn't really matter, but you know, here we are sitting here talking about it and nitpicking it. So part of me that thinks that's fun.
If this ever disappears like a fart in the wind, the rankings, you just give me a call. I'll talk football with you, man. I can do it without a poll. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But,
okay.
Here we go, swirling around that thing. Once again, I don't know. Like once upon a time when the path to competing for a national championship was so narrow, as in 2 spots. And then 4, I think there was more frustration because obviously you can be positioned in a way that could put you in an advantage or a disadvantage, fairly or unfairly, with these kind of things. Going back to what you were just talking about, perception. But maybe as we get into an expanded playoff field, some of this won't feel as urgent as far as the need to have Joe Blow and BFE somewhere knowing about your team and not just because of the sticker that's on the side of the helmet. But up until that point, for 100+ years, or at least the entirety of my lifetime, there's been a lot of frustration because there's only so much room at the table. And for some reason, these 65 or whatever you said it was, guys have had so much impact in seating everyone, right or wrong. And, you know, at a point in time when nothing has happened. But I think maybe there is something to alleviate that frustration, known as an expanded college football playoff in some years to come. Speaking of the aforementioned Red Raider head coach Joey McGuire, we're going to hear from him once again coming up next. We're back to the LBK. I want to talk specialists, specifically return men. Once upon a time, seemed like you had a loaded weapon back there on the regular. Will you be back in that category again in 2023? Seems like it's been a little while since you were really a factor in the return game. We'll get to that and those guys who are going to have that opportunity, at least to begin the season, coming up next on Locked On Texas Tech. First, today's episode brought to you by Nutrafol. Are you one of those guys that thinks losing your hair is inevitable? Maybe that's because, 80% of men will experience thinning hair in their lifetime. It is normal, but it doesn't have to be your destiny. And right now you can get ahead of the thinning and take control of your hair's future with Nutrafol's science-backed hair growth supplement, drug-free and with patented technology that always gives you consistent, reliable results without compromising your health or sexual stamina. And you're going to need plenty of energy because your dance card's going to stay full with a revitalized coif. So head on over right now to Nutrafol.com/men. That's Nutrafol.com/men. And right now, for a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our audience $10 off your first month's subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com/men and enter the promo code LOCKEDONCollege. And again, $10 off your first month's subscription and free shipping right now at Nutrafol.com/men and with the promo code LOCKEDONCollege. Glad to have you along for the ride on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. With Chris, I'm Casey, coming to you from west of the 100th Meridian, where it's really going down. Let's get back to the Red Raiders here in the 806 and back to more sound from Texas Tech head coach Joey McGuire, this time talking about the return game. And I'm not so sure how many out there have got some idea of the lay of the land here, who's going to get some opportunity. Some of these mentions were heard by myself for the first time in this type of capacity, so maybe the same thing out there for some of you. As Coach McGuire runs down returners both in the punt game and in the kick game that he's anticipating beginning the season with. Here is Joey McGuire.
Miles will be our primary punt returner, but Jordan Brown's right there with him and pushing him. And then kickoff returner, Jordan Brown and Dre McCray are the two main ones, and they've looked good. Both of them, if you see him walking around, especially Jordan, if you saw him last year or this year, I mean, he's 190 pounds. He was probably weighing 178 last year to maybe 180 on a good day. So he's put on really good muscle, and you can tell by the way he's playing, he's really physical. And again, if you said probably a player of the day on offense, it would have been Jordan Brown.
When I heard Joey talk about the answer this question in these terms, I guess I was surprised that they were as far down the road on this as they were. They pretty much have decisions made, with starters, top backups, and things like that. As it relates to, who's going to handle punts and kicks from a return standpoint. And Miles Price isn't obvious. Adrian Fry had been kind of a primary punt returner here when healthy. Miles has dabbled there obviously quite a bit. And, we're all looking for the next, Welker, Jakeem Grant, or, somebody with some wiggle, somebody with some – because some coaches feel differently about – putting a starter back there or putting a dude back there, like let's put our best player back there. Let's make something happen. And I think Miles can obviously do that. I think you want someone very sure-handed back there, because I think that you'd be surprised how hard it is to find guys that can just field a punt, much less catch it and return it. I think that it was funny like 2 or 3 years ago, because I'm like, how did Fry end up as the punt returner? He's not a guy not elite speed, not a ton of wiggle, but they were like, he's really the only guy we had that could really just straight up field it and not fumble, not, whatever, field it cleanly. I'm thinking all these like slot receiver, skill receiver types, whatever. And they couldn't do it, bouncing off their shoulder pad or hitting off their face mask or,
hey, it's different in catching a pass, man. And for my money's worth, one of the most terrifying jobs to have in football.
Your chin is in the air, and you've got like 11 people bearing down on you as fast as they can. Yes. And you're. I mean, it may be one of the most difficult things in sports, honestly. I mean, hitting a baseball is probably the toughest athletically, but this is one of the most terrifying things. You're right. Kickoff return. The guys coming after you way down there, you can kind of get a feel with your periphery vision of kind of what's happening, whatever.
There's no longer a wedge or wedge buster.
Yeah.
If they even look at you wrong, it's a 15-yard penalty.
yes, but punt return. So, and then kickoff
I'm making
return,
it sound like kick return is just some like bubble safety wrap job. Not quite that. But it has changed a little over the years.
The scarier part on the kick return is more of like the guys running down the field, like just like shot out of a cannon.
Wedge buster, baby.
Yeah, exactly. And then you just collision after collision after collision, which is why the NCAA and football in general is kind of semi tried to eliminate that play.
Yeah, very scary.
And that's why I think Texas Tech essentially wants to eliminate that play from having to cover it by having a kickoff guy that just puts it in the back of the end zone every time. It's one less thing that can hurt you, on having a return back for a touchdown or whatever. So, but yeah, we talked about Jordan Brown quite a bit yesterday. His name has been mentioned prominently in both spots here as punt and kick return. So I think that noted. I remember his name, and then
Right.
you get the Miles Price and Dre McCrae's, who are kind of like their starter types. So
Yep.
sounds like it's pretty close to figured out.
Man, I'm excited to see Dre McCrae in that capacity because he sounds like lightning in a bottle. And man, yeah, just strolling down memory lane, thinking about some of the greats. Going back to guys like Tyrone Thurman, obviously Wes Welker and Amendola and Grant.
Johnny Mack.
Yo, it's your boy J Mac. Leave it. I still remember the voicemail. Who's the last loaded weapon that we've had back there? Who comes to mind?
Jakeem Grant.
Jakeem Grant's the most
Yeah,
recent. That's been a little while.
Yeah, he had a kickoff return for touchdown. I don't know, 6-7 years ago.
Yeah, he's continued to do it in the NFL.
He sure has. And you haven't had you've been much better at punt returner in your history than you have at kickoff return. I mean, Johnny Mack. The reason I bring him up is because he's like 6 to 8 yards deep in the end zone. It's like, man, screw it. I'm bringing this thing out. And sometimes it worked. A lot of times it didn't because everybody's up in the stands going, do they teach them to do this? What are we doing? Don't we want to kneel it and get it at the 20? Which is back then it would have, you didn't get it at the 25, but a couple times it did work. Now, lots of other times you get tackled like the 12. You're like, well, there's those hidden yards that I keep reading about. We were -8 right there. What is going on? So
right. Johnny Mack's one of those guys that if you were not paying attention during that time, he may have got lost in the wash memory wise, but
stud.
Guys like Nehemiah Glover, I mean,
oh yeah,
on the list forever. Guys like that.
Yeah, I mean, Johnny Mack's coaching high school football.
Yeah.
I think in Houston, still has got the best smile, man, and still stays in contact with a lot of folks. Nehemiah is actually in Houston, too. I always see him anytime the Red Raiders are playing in a bowl game there, the Cougs, and he still smiles and talks smack, man, to the whoever the opposition is. He will let them know, man.
One of my favorites, man.
Yes, absolutely.
Heavy hitters from not too long ago. Would love to continue to build on that list. I was hoping I'd forgotten somebody, but man, if we're going back to Jakeem Grant, that's been a few years. So let's go ahead and fill those shoes, boys. It's been too long. All right, looking forward to that, and also looking forward to not a revamped, but how about an upgraded, improved, or evolved? I don't know what you want to use. Secondary in 2023. Coming up next, we're going to hear from secondary coach Marcel Yates on one guy in particular who might provide them with that luxury, but also want to talk about some of those other guys in the mix because you've got some homegrown experience, at least in a way. You've got some transfer experience now showing up as well. You're trying to establish some chemistry with. A big job, but also big potential, I think, for those guys on the back end of Tim DeRuyter's defense. And we'll get to that dead ahead on Locked On Texas Tech. Thanks for making Locked On Texas Tech a part of your day once again. Appreciate being your first listen. Please subscribe on YouTube if you haven't so far, or wherever you got this podcast so you miss nothing as the ramp up to football season is on. Texas Tech as a team overall, Chris, we feel like is closer to older than younger. You've got a lot of experience, obviously, on both sides of the football and many different positional groups. And one of those that's really interesting and you need to be really good for you, just like every year, this is really insightful stuff here, your secondary, your collection of defensive backs. Because you've got some guys who, I said homegrown talent a moment ago, but I'm actually talking about some transfer guys that have just been here for a little while, I guess. But you've had some seasoning in a Red Raider uniform for some of these guys, but you've also got some new arrivals who have got seasoning elsewhere, guys like CJ Baskerville and guys like Bralyn Lux. I want to start with Lux because it was interesting the other day to hear secondary coach Marcel Yates talking about Bralyn Lux and kind of how he came upon his radar. So let's start there with Marcel Yates, and we'll get into some bigger thoughts on the group at large. Here is Coach Yates on Bralyn Lux, the Fresno State transfer.
Fresno State, he was a guy that he's played a lot. The film that I watched on him was when they played against USC, right? And he played against that receiver. I forget the kid's name, the one that transferred from Pittsburgh, I think. And so I watched him play against him man to man. He played well against him. So he's a guy that's been under the lights. He's made plays. The thing that I love about him right now, what he's showing is he loves to practice. He loves the game. You know what I mean? He comes out here every day. He just works. So right now what he's doing is he's just stacking up the days.
Yep, that's right. And who he's talking about that Bralyn Lux covered in that game that was playing for USC is a young man by the name of Bralyn Addison. Jordan Addison. Jeez, here I am. I'm Bralyn Lux. Jordan Addison. Jordan Addison was the 23rd pick in the first round of the draft last year. He's obviously pretty good. And I think that Bralyn held him to, I think, 6 catches, about just under 70 yards last year. Had a 2-yard touchdown catch. But this was the Blitnikoff Award winner the year before, and he transferred. It was a highly publicized transfer from Pitt all the way to USC. Kind of happened in the summertime of the year before, and it was kind of well publicized. But this is a bona fide NFL receiver, and so I think when Marcel Yates looks at, okay, about to bring this DB in here, let's see what he can do with one of the best guys in the country. And I think that he held him to modest numbers. I think Bralyn Lux was actually, one of the leading tacklers for Fresno State in that game as well. Had 6 or 7 tackles, which either tied or was just under the team lead that particular day, and then had a pass deflection and all those things. So I think it told him a lot. I will tell you, though, that since he's gotten here, he has earned a ton of respect internally because of, I think, what you hear Coach Yates talking about, consistent, stacks the days. I think he's not the biggest guy because he's about 5'10", and you're looking around, these other guys are 6'3", whatever, like Rashad and Malik are. But he plays bigger than he is, and he plays hard. And I'm not going to be surprised. So hear what I'm saying here. I'm not going to be surprised at all if he ends up being a starter for you in game 1. Yeah, I think he's been that
unrelated to like injury with somebody else, just purely earned it.
I mean, I just think that he's pushed his way into the mix. And and let's be honest, you've had Malik missing a few days because of, I think, what is an ankle. You've had Rashad kind of slower to get back from the deal and all that. Right. I mean, again, somebody's taking advantage of it. That's Bralyn Lux, and it's not that these other guys have but this is football, and if you miss 3 or 4 days, I mean, it's like, you don't want to get replaced. And so that's why guys like try, coach, I'm fine. I'm not hurt, man. Let me just practice. Let me play, because they don't want to get
time marches on.
Wally pipped. Yeah, that's right. So.
Before we get out of here, let me ask you really quickly. I know this could be like a deadline deal. I want to make sure I hadn't already missed something, but Baylor transfer, AJ McCarty. We've got an appeals process playing out. Some have indicated it could be very close to the season unless something's already arrived that I missed. Anything new with AJ McCarty or a feel on his situation?
Waiting on the NCAA. I suspect you'll get the news that he's, hey man, your waiver has been denied, and which is, I kind of am expecting that. I think that that is likely a likely scenario that he will be denied because he's still got a redshirt year left. And he's still, I just think I'll file this away into the Cole Spencer category, and that,
gotcha.
It'll suck right now, and you'd love to have him right now, but it'll be great a year from now. And it's like, man, it's great. He's still got 2 or 3 years left, and he's a starting corner or whatever for us. But I mean, he would factor in heavily if he was if he is deemed eligible. So remember that I said that if you get the good word, because he's practicing and full go. If you get the good word, look for him on the field more often than not.
Okay, good to know. And good to be back with you once again, man. Enjoy all the insights and appreciate the time. And we'll do it again tomorrow. Thanks.
Looking forward to it, and we'll come up with something good to talk about tomorrow. I have an idea about a list that was just released, and we love the list.
It's still off season.
Some Red Raiders were listed, and it's a good list too.
All right, so join us once again tomorrow for that, and subscribe on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts, and of course head there to catch up on anything you might have missed so far. For Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Looking forward to seeing you then for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.